Hey there. Before we get started today, we just wanted to remind you to please like and subscribe to our channel.
Yes,
It
please.
helps us grow and, reach more listeners.
For sure.
So today we're looking at something you've asked us to unpack.
All right.
The proposed Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act,
Okay.
or S.6 as it's known.
Right.
We've got some sources for you.
Let's hear it.
Info straight from congress.gov about what the bill says and who's supporting it. Plus, some legal analysis of how it might impact Title 18 of the U.S. Code, which is the main federal criminal code.
Sounds like a lot to cover.
It is.
Yeah.
So let's start with the basics.
Okay.
What exactly is S.6 trying to do?
Well, this bill, S.6, was introduced by Senator James Lankford,
Okay.
a Republican from Oklahoma, on January 15th of this year.
This year?
And it's aiming to make some changes to the U.S. criminal code
I see.
by adding a whole new section,
Okay.
Section 1532, to Title 18. Essentially, it would make it a crime for healthcare providers to not give the same level of care to an infant born alive after an attempted abortion as they would to any other baby born at the same gestational age.
So if a baby is born alive after an attempted abortion,
Yeah,
this bill is saying they have to be treated just like any other newborn.
exactly. And it goes beyond just providing care.
No.
The bill also requires healthcare providers to report any instances where this standard of care isn't met.
Interesting.
And it even gives women legal options to sue if they believe the act was violated.
Wow. So we're seeing some potential legal ramifications for healthcare providers here. But what about the journey of this bill itself?
Right.
Our sources from congress.gov give us a timeline of what's happened so far.
Well, it's been a bit of
What's a good word?
a roller coaster, you could say. After it was introduced in the Senate, there was a cloture motion, which is basically a way to limit debate and get to a vote faster.
Mm-hmm.
Things got pretty intense, though.
Intense. That's a good word for it. That cloture vote on January 22nd was super close, 52 to 47.
Yeah.
What does that tell us about the support for this bill?
Well, the fact that it was so close definitely suggests there are some strong feelings on both sides of this issue.
Mm-hmm.
And when we look at the list of co-sponsors, we can see who's throwing their weight behind this bill.
Okay.
S.6 has 46 co-sponsors, and every single one of them is a Republican senator.
So we're seeing some clear party lines emerging here.
Yeah.
Any big names on that list of co-sponsors?
Oh, yeah, some prominent figures in the Republican Party. Senators Thune, McConnell, Graham, Cruz, Scott, the list goes on.
Wow.
Clearly, this is something many Republicans are supporting, but even with that support, it didn't pass the cloture vote.
Right. It failed by a narrow margin, which makes me even more curious to understand exactly what this bill is proposing. What does S6 actually say, point by point?
Let's break it down. First, as we mentioned, it mandates that healthcare practitioners have to provide the same care to infants born alive after an attempted abortion as they would to any other newborn.
So no difference in treatment?
No difference in treatment.
That seems pretty clear-cut.
It does, but then it gets into specifics.
Okay.
Like making sure these infants are immediately transported and admitted to a hospital. And when it comes to consequences for not following these rules, S.6 it's serious.
Okay. How so?
We're talking potential penalties like fines, imprisonment for up to 5 years, or even this bill definitely wants to make sure healthcare providers are paying attention.
Yeah.
But here's an interesting twist. The mother of the child is exempt from prosecution.
So the focus is entirely on the actions of the healthcare providers.
Right.
That's a deliberate choice by the bill's authors. But shifting gears a bit,
Sure.
our analysis of S6 mentions something called acquitted conduct. What does that mean and why is it relevant here?
That's a great question. It's a little technical, but essentially acquitted conduct refers to actions that someone was found not guilty of.
Okay.
S.6 is trying to change how this is used in federal sentencing.
Hmm.
Basically, it wants to limit the use of acquitted conduct to only charges that were dismissed in federal court, not state court.
Hold on. Can you walk me through that again? Why wouldn't acquittals in state courts count?
Think of it this way. The federal government and state governments have their own separate legal systems. That's called the dual sovereignty doctrine.
Okay.
S.6 seems to be trying to strengthen that separation by saying that if a healthcare provider is acquitted of a certain charge in state court, the feds can't use that acquittal against them in a separate federal case.
Ah, okay. So it's all about clarifying how federal and state laws interact, especially when it comes to cases related to S6.
Exactly.
Now, we talk about how S6 impacts Title 18 by adding this new section, but our source mentions that it's not totally clear which existing sections of Title 18 might be affected.
That's right. The research doesn't explicitly say which parts of the existing criminal code might be impacted. But since the focus is on babies who are born alive after an abortion, it's reasonable to think it could impact sections related to infanticide or laws that protect infants in general.
So it could potentially overlap with or even contradict existing laws?
That's certainly a possibility, and it's something legal experts are likely going to debate.
And speaking of potential impacts, S.6 also dives into defining department and agency within Section 6 of Title 18, which hasn't been updated since 1948.
It's a fascinating detail. Section 6 lays out what those terms mean in legal terms, and while S.6 doesn't directly change that section, it does introduce new things to consider, like the role of healthcare providers in these situations. So legal scholars will likely examine if these new provisions indirectly affect how those old definitions are interpreted.
So even if S.6 doesn't directly change certain parts of the law, it could still have a ripple effect on how those parts are understood and applied.
Precisely, it's like throwing a stone into a pond. The ripples can spread further than you might initially expect. That brings up a really crucial question. What kind of impact would S.6 actually have if it became law?
Yeah, we've talked about the specifics of the bill, but I'm curious about the bigger picture. What are the potential consequences, intended or unintended?
Well, for one thing, it's likely to change the legal landscape surrounding abortion in the U.S. Think about existing laws within Title 18 that deal with things like infanticide or the protection of infants in general.
How would S.6 fit in with those laws? Could it create conflicts or even strengthen existing protections?
That's what legal experts are trying to figure out. Adding a specific section like 1532 could lead to some tricky legal questions. Imagine a scenario where a healthcare provider is accused of violating S.6.
Okay.
Would they be prosecuted under this new section, or would existing laws about infanticide take precedence?
That's a good question.
Yeah, and it highlights the need for careful legal analysis. Could this result in prosecutors having multiple options for charges? Could there be conflicts between federal and state laws?
Right.
These are the types of complexities that could be debated in court for years if S.6 were to become law.
And it's not just about criminal prosecution. S.6 also introduces this idea of civil remedies, which means legal action taken by individuals rather than the government.
It's a thinking behind that.
It's a significant aspect of this bill, and it's designed to give women more power in these situations. If a woman feels her rights have been violated under the provisions of S.6, she could potentially sue.
So let's say a woman believes a healthcare provider didn't provide the required level of care to a baby born alive after an attempted abortion. She could sue that provider.
Exactly. The bill even outlines what a woman could seek in such a lawsuit.
Yeah.
We're talking compensation for things like physical and emotional distress damages based on the cost of the procedure itself, and even punitive damages, which are meant to punish the defendant. So it sounds like the bill is trying to provide a range of legal options for women who feel they've been wronged, and there's even mention of legal fees being covered, right?
Yes. The bill says the court must award legal fees to the woman if she wins the lawsuit.
Okay.
But on the flip side, if she loses and the court decides the lawsuit was frivolous, she could be responsible for paying the defendant's legal fees.
It sounds like there's a lot at stake for everyone involved.
Absolutely. This isn't just about legal technicalities. It touches on some really fundamental questions.
Like what?
Questions about when life begins, the rights of infants, and the role of medical intervention. These are ethical and moral issues that people have been grappling with for a long time.
Yeah, it's amazing how one proposed law can spark such a wide range of discussions. But let's bring it back to you, our listener. Why should you care about the intricacies of S.6?
Even if you aren't directly involved in healthcare or the legal system, the implications of this bill are far-reaching. It has the potential to impact women, families, and healthcare providers across the country. The decisions made about this bill could have a ripple effect on access to healthcare and the legal rights of individuals.
It's a good example of how laws, especially ones dealing with such sensitive issues, can have a real impact on people's lives.
And beyond the immediate impact, this bill highlights how society is constantly evolving and how it approaches complex ethical dilemmas.
Digging into S.6 has shown me that this isn't just a political game. It's about real people making real choices with real consequences.
That's an important point. It can be easy to get caught up in the political debate surrounding abortion, but this bill forces us to look at the human side of the issue.
These aren't just abstract concepts we're discussing. They have the power to shape lives, influence medical practices, and define the very boundaries of what's considered legally and ethically acceptable.
Which is why staying informed is so important. It's crucial to understand the nuances of proposed legislation like S.6, to engage in thoughtful conversations and to make your voice heard.
Whether you support S.6 or oppose it, being an informed and engaged citizen is key.
Exactly. Take the time to understand the arguments on both sides. Think about how this could affect different people and form your own conclusions based on the facts. And remember, the facts are often more complex than they might seem at first glance.
So we've really examined S.6 from all angles, its purpose, its content, its potential impact, and even its place within the larger context of the abortion debate. But as we were going through all of this, was there anything that particularly stood out to you?
You know what struck me was how S.6 connects to the concept of born alive. The bill actually references the Born Alive Infants Protection Act, which was passed back in 2002.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that.
Well, S.6 brings that 2002 act back into the spotlight and raises some interesting questions about its interpretation and enforcement.
What do you mean?
Well, the 2002 Act was largely symbolic. It affirmed that babies born alive, no matter the circumstances of their birth, are legal persons entitled to protection under the law, but it didn't really have any teeth, so to speak, in terms of enforcement mechanisms.
And S.6 is trying to change that.
That seems to be the goal by introducing specific requirements for healthcare providers and potential penalties for violations. S.6 is attempting to add some real consequences to the idea of protecting born alive infants.
So it's like S.6 is building on the foundation of the 2002 Act, moving from a symbolic statement to a more concrete set of legal obligations.
Exactly, and that's what makes S.6 so controversial. It's shifting the debate from abstract principles to real-world medical practices and legal consequences.
So where does that leave S.6? Will it eventually become law, or will it fade away like so many other controversial bills?
As of right now, it's hard to say. The fact that it failed the cloture vote in the Senate suggests there's significant opposition. But remember, it's not unusual for bills to be reintroduced and debated multiple times before they either pass or are completely abandoned.
So we just have to wait and see what happens.
In a sense, yes, but it's not a passive waiting game. This is an issue that deserves our attention and engagement, whether you support S.6 or oppose it. Staying informed about its progress, understanding the arguments on both sides, and making your voice heard are important ways to shape the outcome of this debate.
It's about more than just observing the legislative process. It's about understanding how that process shapes our society, our laws, and our values.
Well said. And sometimes the most important part of that process isn't what happens in Congress, but what happens in the minds and hearts of the American people.
So stay curious, stay engaged, and stay informed. The conversation about S.6 and what it means for all of us is far from over.
And that leads us to the most crucial question.
Yeah, what's next?
Because this is just a snapshot in time, isn't it? Everything we've discussed about S.6, the legal landscape, public opinion, it's all subject to change.
Exactly. That's what makes following these types of legislative developments so fascinating. Even if S.6 doesn't become law this time around, the questions it brings up aren't going to just disappear. So thinking beyond the fate of this specific bill,
Sure.
what are some potential ripple effects we could see?
Well, one thing is for sure,
What's that?
S6 has definitely revived the debate surrounding born alive cases. Could this lead to more proposed legislation at the state level? Could we see legal challenges to existing laws related to abortion or infanticide?
Interesting.
Those are all possibilities we need to consider.
Yeah, it also makes me think about the potential impact on medical practices.
Uh-huh.
Could this lead to healthcare providers being more cautious when performing late-term abortions?
Mm-hmm.
Could the fear of lawsuits or prosecution change how these procedures are carried out?
Those are very real concerns, and we can't forget about the emotional toll this could take on healthcare providers who are already dealing with complex and sensitive situations.
Right.
The weight of these legal and ethical considerations is significant.
It really underscores the point we made earlier about the human element of this issue. SB6 has the potential to affect not just laws and policies, but the lives and careers of real people.
And we can't overlook the broader impact on society as a whole. Could S.6 further divide people on the issue of abortion? Could it lead to more activism on both sides of the debate?
It seems like this bill, regardless of its outcome, has the potential to be a catalyst for more in-depth conversations about our values as a society, our understanding of life and death, and the role of individual choice in healthcare.
These are conversations we need to have, and they can't be limited to just politicians and legal experts. Every informed citizen should be a part of this dialogue.
So what can our listeners do to stay engaged with this issue moving forward?
Don't let this be a one-time thing. Keep yourself updated on what's happening with S6 and any related legislation. Follow reputable news sources, read legal analyses, and pay attention to what experts are saying.
And don't just passively absorb information. Talk about these issues with your friends and family.
Yeah.
Contact your elected officials and let them know what you think.
That's right. Make your voice heard and participate in the process. Remember, these aren't just theoretical political debates. They have real-world consequences that affect all of us.
It's been enlightening to explore S.6 and its complexities. It's a good reminder that even in this age of information overload, taking the time to really understand the nuances of important issues is crucial.
And these issues are rarely black and white. There are many different viewpoints and perspectives, and the answers aren't always easy to find.
Right.
But that's what makes engaging with them so important.
It's been great having you with us today. We hope this has given you some new insights and maybe even inspired you to keep learning about this ever-changing topic.
And remember, the pursuit of knowledge and understanding is an ongoing journey. Keep asking questions, keep seeking out diverse perspectives, and keep challenging yourself to think critically about the world around you.
Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.